Warren County is blessed with a range of economic opportunities, including in industry, education, entertainment, tourism, and the medical field. The comprehensive plan lays out goals and objectives pertaining to economic development. As we look ahead to 2030, we should consider if these goals are still what we want, and if these or other objectives will get us to where we want to be. Here in Warren County, we've been fortunate to largely avoid economic decline or stagnation. What has helped make us successful? Are we making wise choices to continue that success, or are there other things we should be doing? One objective in the comp plan urges the strengthening of the position of downtown Bowling Green as a community focus of economic activity. Goals to achieve this include improving the availability of information on tourist attractions and encouraging the provision of additional residential, retail, and office in downtown. Another objective calls for supporting the continuation and strengthening of a high-value local agriculture sector and related economic opportunities. Goals to obtain this objective include supporting the continuance and expansion of WKU's farm activities, as well as allowing and encouraging agritourism, farmers markets, and similar activities. While it's likely that we all want continued success for our county, how we achieve that and what it looks like is up to us.
Continuing with our comprehensive plan update in 2022, we start with our first element or chapter of the plan, which is economic development. And before I begin, I'd like to just thank our Chamber of Commerce partners for looking at this plan, this chapter with us, and setting up a series of interviews, making contacts, and just helping us out with this chapter. So with that, I'll go ahead and begin. Some just facts and stats about economic development taken from the southcentralkentucky.com website, which is the Chamber's website. Warren County is located within a day's drive of 60% of the United States population. Our cost of living is 10% lower than the national average. We have a labor force of about 141,000 people in the 10-county region that we draw from. The 10-county region population is right at 300,000 people. Over 76% of the labor force is between the prime working ages of 25 to 54 years old. 23% of that population is under the age of 18. And within a 600-mile radius, 54% of all U.S. personal income is there. We have 41% of U.S. retailers and 51% of America's manufacturing workforce, all within 600 miles of Warren County in the region. In Warren County, we have over 20 international companies. Our largest employers are listed there. I won't read those, but those are regional numbers. Our headquarters in Warren County, but employ people both in Warren County, mostly in Warren County, and some outside. And then our, of course, largest manufacturers are listed there as well. So we have one economic development goal, and that is to maintain a strong local economy that provides opportunities and resources to everyone in Warren County. This is followed by 10 objectives under that goal that we look at to try to achieve that goal, and we'll go through those here in just a second. So our first objective is to pursue actions to strengthen core industries, retain existing businesses and industries in the community, and attract new businesses and industries, particularly those that will help to diversify the local economy. We have 8 action items under this objective. The first action item is to support efforts to promote Warren County as a prime business location. 2 is to promote recruitment of high-wage employers and diversify types of businesses. 3, to recruit new businesses to 2 major industrial parks. And 4, disseminate information on availability of vacant business space. Objective number 5, support state and federal facilities in Warren County. This has been happening the entire time and continues to happen, encouraging those state offices and federal facilities to remain in Warren County. Objective 6, review zoning map for sufficient industrial and commercial space. That is ongoing. We will be doing more of that as we go through this process and come out the other side of that. But we continue to add industrial lands and expansion. Transpark has expanded approximately 3 times, I believe, since I've been here in 6 years. And then commercial space continues to evolve as we go through some of the transitions we discussed in the previous video. Objective 1.7, promote Warren County as an upscale retirement community. This may be one that we look to alter or eliminate. Objective 1.8, encourage development and expansion of healthcare facilities as well as retirement age facilities. Now let's look at some of our recent past 10-year community successes. Throughout the life of the Transpark and South Central Kentucky Industrial Park, we've had 146 job-creating projects, a $4.1 billion investment in the last 10 years. That was about $2.2 billion. We've had 8,982 jobs created between those two industrial parks, and again, about 4,200 of those new jobs are created just since 2011. And then the Transpark specifically, some numbers there. That began with Bowling Green Metal Forming in 2003 as the first project landed. The last 2 successes we've had there are Ball Corporation. They had a $305 million investment. And then our largest, which is also the most recent, is Tyson Foods, $355 million investment and 451 new jobs. So for more on this Objective 1, we'll interview Ron Bunch.
So we're here with Ron Bunch, President and CEO of the Bowling Green Area Chamber of Commerce, and we very much appreciate the Chamber partnership and what all you've done to help us talk about this economic development element and your staff's assistance in setting up all these interviews. I think we have 10 objectives here, and we get to start with you with Objective 1, and I'll just read that real quick. It's to pursue actions to strengthen core industries, retain existing businesses and industries in the community, and attract new businesses and industries, particularly those that will help diversify the local economy. So quite a mouthful there for you, I know, but just to kind of kick it off, our first question is just what are our core industries in Warren County?
Yeah, I mean, we call them targeted businesses, and those are businesses that generally do more than 50% of their business outside of the state of Kentucky. So you're importing new money and building economic base.
Big business.
Well, the nature of the business is really the differentiator. And from there, the other thing we do is look at location quotient. Do we have a cluster of those types of businesses so that we would have a chance of success at growing those or recruiting those? And so for us, I mean, it's what you would expect. Primarily manufacturing, primarily advanced manufacturing, quite a bit of automotive. We've diversified into some food. Motorsports is a subset for us. Manufacturing equipment is another subset for us. Distribution has become more of a focal point for us. And then we used to target headquarters, but really headquarters was never a viable target for our organization. So we've shifted more toward white collar office type operations. And so we've had really good success. We've been nationally ranked for 8 years in a row. Based on this year's performance, that I can't see that we wouldn't be nationally ranked again next year. So in our traditional existing targeted businesses and recruitment, we've been very successful because there's a great team here. And so I feel like they're solid. Industry is changing though. I mean, we're going more to electric vehicles, and that's changing with lightweighting of vehicles and other platforms. And so we'll have to work with our companies to continue to evolve as that market happens. So I think our main opportunity really is diversification. I think is our main focal area going forward.
You mentioned diversification and some of that diversity. So maybe 10 or so years ago or in the recent past, what did the business or industrial recruiting landscape look like 10 years ago versus maybe today? Because I know we've had some success in diversity.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I've been here 11 years now, so really it's fairly common to take 2 to 3 years to build a momentum. And so the first 2 to 3 years, we were really reestablishing the foundation to support our targeted businesses, and then from there, accelerating our help in them expanding and recruiting. And so some of the changes you've seen more recently tie back to trends that are happening, where people are relooking their distribution channels and where suppliers are. And so we've been very successful in recruiting companies that are in the supply chain of larger companies here. So Logan Aluminum and some of the companies that tie back to Logan Aluminum, suppliers to General Motors, suppliers to Henkel. So we've had a lot of success in automotive, have had some success in chemicals with Henkel and related operations, and plastics with bottles at Graham Packaging and Alpla. More recently, we've had some success more in the distribution with Dollar General Fresh, one of their first distribution centers for that. Just recently with Tyson, both Crown and Ball, while they're not food related, they are in a regulated industry where you're going to put something you consume in a can, which is very different than producing a frame for a vehicle.
Right.
And so we've been successful in getting increasingly complex manufacturing, which is good for the economy and good for our community.
So what types of changes, or I guess what shifted, what types of demographics or metrics do you all look at when you're trying to figure out who to go for, what to go for, or see those shifting trends?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So back to the earlier answer, first screen is we look for a targeted business. So the nature of the business is they sell more than 50% of their products. So it could be software. As long as they sell more than half of it outside of our area, that means they're going to import new money.
Right.
So that's the first screen. Would they qualify for incentives in any state, including Kentucky? From there, it's what do we have a specialization in already? So we do what's called a location quotient analysis, which looks at, do you have a higher employment concentration than the national average in your area? Because that would point to positive business conditions that could help you continue. Then we look to see, is that sector that you have an advantage, is it growing or declining? Because if it's declining, there'll be less opportunities for you to go after. And so we're continually sort of evolving that mix. What we've seen, it hasn't really been like a wholesale change in those. It's been more of a change in how they do business, or where they do business, or the products that they do. So let's look at Holley as an example. I think a lot of citizens would remember them as Holley Carburetor. They have not been Holley Carburetor for decades now. They're really an innovation company. It's not uncommon for them to launch 1,000 to 1,500 new products every year. They are now headquartered in Bowling Green as the largest motorsports company in the world by far. Everything from off-road trucks to electric vehicles to safety equipment. They're a very diverse company, and they've added probably 500,000 square feet. So they're still our core customer that they've always been. Just the mix of what they're doing, we've been able to work with them as they acquire companies and consolidating them back here, which has been a goal. And so our community's kept a great business climate that allows us then to extend to those companies, hey, as you're looking at new opportunities, we're still a great fit for you. And so it's been more evolution versus a wholesale change. With COVID and some of that stuff more recently, what you've seen is more onshoring, more people looking at their whole supply chain and making sure that they can produce product with a shorter supply chain and not have as much exposure.
Right.
And so we've seen projects as a result of that. And then even more recently, with the announcement of like Ford SK and the transition to EV, we're seeing a lot more, not just battery related projects, but projects that would tie back to lightweighting of vehicles, different chassis, different components. We're seeing more of that now too.
Sounds like a good time to be a good mix of those things that we're well positioned for.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
excellent. So pull out Ron's crystal ball. What do we need to be thinking about in the future? Certainly next 10 years, but what are some issues we need to probably be mindful of in the community?
Talent's number one.
Talent.
I mean, I took my first year here to sort of assess the landscape, and from that we came up with 2 focal points that have been on our radar screen from the very beginning of my tenure here. One has been talent, and we've made some great strides in that with building out the SCK launch and creating more of a demand-driven system with a public workforce system. So talent, given the current trends, is going to be a pain point for at least the next decade plus. And so helping that system to be a lot more efficient and taking the friction out, we really need a better way of matching supply and demand. At present, you've got a gap of about 7,000 jobs that could be filled. To give you an idea, if we fill just the jobs that are open, that's billions.
Right.
It's not a small number. It's billions in recurring economic impact. And these jobs are already open, so it's not like we've got to do something different to create the jobs. We got to get a system that better matches supply and demand and will benefit and increase quality of life just by matching up jobs faster.
Right. So we got the jobs, need the talent to fit the jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's that simple, but it's that complex too, because there's no one entity really that owns all the parts. So it's really as Covey would say, it's a interdependence.
Sure.
And so that's our opportunity. Luckily, we come together well as a community, so we're working on that. But for us to really continue to prosper, we really need to solve that. Other communities across the country are wrestling with it too, so it's not like we're unique. But I think we've got a decade-long head start. We just got to keep building on that head start and not let others catch up. And then the other is innovation. When I got here, the university wasn't as present in the innovation and technology-based economic development scene with the vision Dr. Gaboni has now for having an innovation campus and some of the personnel decisions that have been made. I really think we're in a point now to really begin hitting that single, hitting that double, hitting the triple, and every once in a while hitting it out of the park. And so over the next decade, really doing more technology-based economic development and innovation-related stuff. I mean, just look to my example again about Holly. Here's a company that on their own is launching 1,000, 1,200, maybe 1,500 new products. What would happen if we, through the university, help tap intellectual property among all the universities or even public research entities and brought that internet intellectual property to benefit Holly? That helps us grow faster and it creates jobs where there's a better margin. And so those kind of activities, because we'll continue to be successful in traditional economic development, so talent and tech-based economic development and innovation, and that's where we would diversify. So how do we, given the growth and pull, it's like a solar system. Nashville's economy is so hot that it comes right up I-65, and we're the biggest community as close to it as possible. So how do we leverage that, benefit from that ecosystem, but yet create our own niches? And so there's a big healthcare component in Nashville. What niche do we create here that's separate and complementary? And so it's really looking at not just our economy, but nearby economies and figure out what can we logically be successful doing? What do we have a competitive advantage in? And so the fact that we have a medical school has got to be a differentiator. So how do we leverage that? Maybe we could get into medical devices or informatics as it relates to healthcare. So what are the other things that are sort of in that tech space and that diversification that we could create the healthcare innovation district downstairs, and then you get downtown, and then have the the river begin to become that asset we all would love to see it become. And so I think all that's interrelated. Diversification, tech-based economic development, talent. Those 3 things are what I see as sort of the opportunity.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Objective 2, ED2 is to pursue the development of corporate business parks to attract leading technology-based businesses. And we have 4 action items there. Market potential sites for business parks that generate high-paying jobs and focus on clean industries. Biggest and best example of that is the Trans Park. ED 2.2, assist in the pursuit and marketing to companies in the field of business applications and product development. 2.3, plan for the development and improvement of technology infrastructure as well as traditional infrastructure. Been a lot of discussion about broadband. There'll be more as we go through this presentation. And then 2.4, review and revise zoning and land development standards to allow flexibility for business parks. We have introduced some of that flexibility and language in both a previous comprehensive plan update and recent zoning text amendments, and we'll continue to look at those trends and monitor those and make adjustments as necessary. Now we will talk to our interviewee.
Okay, we're here with Buddy Steen, president of the WKU Research Foundation, and we're going to continue our conversation on economic development element objective 2, which is to pursue the development of corporate business parks to attract leading technology-based businesses. So first question we have in our conversation starter is just talk about the community's efforts in attracting technology-based businesses.
That's a great question. We have found, 18 years ago, that one of the key elements to attract a company is to give them immediate access to the critical resources that they need. And oftentimes the tech-based businesses, they need resources that maybe aren't as generic as some of the other types of businesses. If it's a startup tech company, we have a 20-acre campus. We call it the Innovation Campus at WKU, which includes the WKU Center for Research and Development. And inside the WKU Center for Research and Development is a small business accelerator that's been specifically built with 50,000 square feet. More if you kind of allocate some of the other spaces. But that space is designed to be plug and play for technology-based businesses, and we have multiple businesses flowing through there. And these are companies that'll start with one person, and they'll hire another person, and another person, and another person. We have one now that's just kind of growing up and into fruition, about to exit, and that's these are 8-figure, in that particular cases, exit. So there's wealth generation, which is very, very important.
Excellent.
That creates the opportunity to reinvest money, into kind of that startup ecosystem. So we have an excellent asset for the startups. Now, the Innovation Campus at WKU, Dr. Caboni, our president, he challenged us to think about what can we do with facilities and programs and various assets to create more meaningful relationships with industry. Now, in doing that, we're going to make Bowling Green a more lucrative place, to start businesses, because they'll have an asset like a 4-year, engineering credit program, closer partnerships. And we've decided that we're in the process of transforming facilities. We are literally reinventing programs, inventing new programs, and pretty much with an aligned purpose to gather intellectual capital, innovative intellectual capital. That's people, that's talent.
Right.
To gather and pool talent in order to create more meaningful relationships, and that's everything from innovation labs or think tanks with students and private sector. To in one of our new areas, part of that transformational facility piece is we took 30,000 square feet at the Center for Research and Development, and we have allocated it to create what we call a collaborative smart space. It's a long title, but it's important, and all those pieces are important because Unlike in the accelerator, where we have 300 square feet spaces, 1,200, 2,400, 4,800, company can start in 300, move to 600, and so forth as they're growing.
Great.
That's an excellent plug and play office. But unlike that, the collaborative smart space is actually a very open environment. We don't want to call it a co-working or desk hoteling, because that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
It's an open place. The idea is the people that are working in there have actually, by the fact that they're part of a membership that are saying to the other people that are working there, I'm a collaborator and I want to collaborate with you. So if you're a web developer, or if you're a web tech company, you may want to put a division in there because you know that the digital content creators that are coming out of Potter College at Western, that they're going to have several folks that are working there. We're going to have VR, AR folks. We've got a podcast booth that we're building. Now all this is unfolding. We haven't launched that project yet. We are actually holding back and kind of testing the space. We changed the lighting. We're putting in some new amenities in there before we just turn it on full.
Right.
But for planning purposes, for this discussion, it's very much apropos, because it is the kind of thing that we're doing proactively in order to address the talent. So the people that now, hundreds of people that will be that membership working through that in that system, that's a pool of talent, Ben. Those are people that could come together to form their own company. Those are people that if we're trying to recruit a company, we can introduce them into that kind of collective group, and they'll have access to talent. And then we're doing other things. So that's sort of a physical proactivity. We're also creating a program called a private living database of talent. Another long title, but very, very important. This is a private, not public, database. It's alive because the people that are in it are actually, in every quarter, we're making sure that they are still interested in talent that's not necessarily located in Bowling Green, but used to be. They moved away.
I got you.
They maybe went to school at Western,
Right.
went to wherever it may be, gained a lot of experience and connected to networks. They could be people like me, that were there, in sort of in a senior level positions that would love to move back to Bowling Green as long as the opportunity was there. Okay, so
Sure.
This is sort of turning it upside down. Instead of just using the talent that's here, we know there's a lot of talent that adds to our overall culture, that could add to our overall standard of living,
Right.
that have moved away for opportunities that want to move back. So we're going to fill that database with thousands of people, privately, confidentially, that we have access to when and if we want to recruit, a tech company.
Sure.
Right, and so we can actually use that database from a planning standpoint. This is a program
Right.
that we are doing proactively, so that when we reach out to a company that we would like to come here, let's say tech company XYZ that's already existing, maybe even a public company, when we talk to their HR, we now have a case to be made that they have access when they come here to talent that will come back for those opportunities, and we know who it is and where they are. We may not share the names yet. We'll just share here's the collection of talent, and if they're interested enough to go to the next level, then we'll
That's awesome.
bring those people together.
That's very, very exciting. So
It is.
what when we talk about in that realm and attracting that talent and creating that talent, what are some of the things that are important from the community perspective to make those folks want to be here and want to live here?
You have hit the nail on the head, Ben. Things have changed. 18 years ago, you created opportunity for a job with opportunity, and then there's folks out there that would want that, and that talent then would connect. The way it is today, we have to be, Bowling Green and this region has to be a place where those talented people want to be, live their lives or work, and have the opportunity. So That's all. It has all to do with the cultural, enhancing the cultural standard of living. Now, we don't get me wrong. I think Bowling Green is fantastic. I mean, I've lived here since my college years, and intentionally so, raised a family. So I'm a huge fan proponent. But because we're sort of in a 2.0 situation in terms of the talent, we've got to, and I like to think of things proactively, as you all do too. We've got to proactively shape that cultural standard of living so that as Nashville continues to grow and do what it's doing, that we evolve, and the folks that are living here and working here and that economy, as that economy evolves, that we don't fall to just a sort of bedroom surface community kind of thing. We can Bowling Green, with its university and its leadership and the folks that are here and all of the wonderful folks that are connected that have left and come back, we have all of the elements to be successful and develop from an economic development standpoint. We just have to put those things together and make sure that it's known.
Yeah, it reminds me of something I was told by the previous city manager community I used to work for about the coming paradigm shift, whereas generations maybe our age and older would find a job and then go find a place to live close to that job, whereas now people find a place to live and then go find a job. Big difference there.
It's a big difference, and also I have noticed a change. 20 years ago, Nashville was a threat. Nashville actually, when a tech-based company would form without the Center for Research and Development, the accelerator and all, those companies would oftentimes jump to Nashville. And I know that personally because I experienced some of that. But now, with the Center for Research and Development and all the things we're doing, and Bowling Green and the various things, that's not necessarily the case. Actually, we are a part of the Nashville economy.
Right.
We're greater Nashville. You know, if you look at an MSA, you know, if Nashville, it cuts at the state line, but it actually naturally extends to Bowling Green, and so that's a no-brainer. But we are able to inherit now the positive things about Nashville. Nashville's growing so much that talent pool that is also growing in Nashville becomes a part of our talent pool, and that's how you attract and retain, you know, and grow tech companies in the area. It's to have access to that talent. So we sort of do have an evolving talent. I want to have much more of that in our database. I want to make sure that we know that exists, so that when we do want something to happen, we want a company, we're trying to get them here tech-wise, that we have all of the requirements that they need.
And I can't help but think that will accelerate with recent Oracle announcement of Oracle building a big $3 billion, I think, dollar headquarters in Nashville. I believe it's the second largest software company in the United States.
That's absolutely right. We don't see any end in sight to the growth, though. I told someone the other day, I said, you know, I retired from my previous work, and I came back and to do this work, and I told someone I felt kind of like I won the lottery in that Nashville, you know, it wasn't up to us necessarily at all for that to happen positively. It's just happening, and so now we've got this the ability to shape that the way that we want from a Bowling Green standpoint.
Sure.
You know, we don't just want to open it up and say, let it be whatever it'll be. We really want to maintain the standard of living. We've got a great standard of living. The economics are good in Bowling Green. We need to enhance the cultural side, just so that the 2.0 version, as you mentioned, the paradox change, that plays in our favor. But overall, I would score Bowling Green very high. I also must say that I have, and I'm sort of in the middle of this, I have nothing but extremely high marks for all of the institutions that are in and around Bowling Green and their alignment. That is not necessarily always the case in communities. I mean, but I really don't see any orthogonal tendencies right now. I mean, I see perfect alignment. I feel like a full partnership with the chamber and everything that we're doing. They're behind us, they're in front of us, they're around us, they're with us. So the university, we have an economic development piece at the Innovation Campus. I've been running the Innovation Campus since last April, and we put together in this kind of umbrella organization. One part of it is a focused tech-based economic development group. It's its own 501c3, and in your planning documents you refer to it as the ICC, Central Region Innovation and Commercialization Center. So that's the economic development piece. The WKURF is the fiscal core. The WKURF actually inherits any intellectual property and also inherits the responsibility of intellectual property at the university to be able to license that and so forth. So bringing those two things together, very powerful. And then the facilities, the WKU CRD is under there as well. And so by bringing that together and then partnering with the chamber and other groups, it's a real win-win.
That's excellent. Excellent. Glad to it's very exciting. Sounds like we're really on the precipice of making even larger strides in a lot of areas. So very much appreciate you coming, participating, and
thanks, Ben.
And being a good community partner.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to Objective 3. It's to support local small businesses, entrepreneurial endeavors, and industries. Action item 3.1, facilitate new small and or home-based businesses, something we like to do any chance we can. Ideally, we would like to create a situation where someone can start a smaller home-based business, grow that into the situation where they're actually outgrow their home and then need a space and a business zone, and then of course grow that business on to being something bigger than anyone ever imagined. 3.2, identify and promote specialty shopping niches. 3.3, improve the availability of information on the internet. We have done a whole lot of that this past 5 or so years, making improvements, expanding the information on our website, online geographic information systems, maps, and then of course social media presences. And hopefully making that easier to find for businesses and economic development prospects to find information. 3.4, support WKU's Centers for Small Businesses, Innovation and Commercialization and Business Accelerators. We'll hear more about that in just a second. Encourage and participate in promotional events that benefit local businesses. And then review the zoning ordinance to allow work-live units. We've talked about that many times. We've tried to make our zones more flexible. There's still some things we would like to look at in that regard, and hopefully some things coming soon, but we are going to be taking closer looks at all of that. Now we will listen to our next interview.
Okay, so we're here with Sabina Lewis, Avant-Garde. Avant-Garde, thank you. As a financial planner and a small business owner here in Bowling Green in Warren County, and appreciate you being here today to continue our conversation on our economic development element of our comprehensive plan. Our objective is to support local small businesses, entrepreneurial endeavors, and industries. So to start off with our first conversation starter question we have here is, what do you feel is the best way the local government or our community can support small businesses? Or business in general?
Yeah, what comes to mind is really fostering that attitude of support local and shop small. I know in some other communities that is very, very prominent. And I think we're getting there, but it's just continuing to foster that more and more. I know the chamber did the business bingo around the holiday season, and I think that was a great effort because they incentivize people to visit small businesses with freebies and discounts and then a potential for a prize. So it exposed people who may not typically walk into these small businesses to see them. And then also connect with the business owner, which I think is really what drives those transactions, those business transactions. When I get to know somebody and I like them, I want to spend my money with them. I want to support them. And so with that, another thing that I've seen within our community starting to really make a presence is these videos where people share their stories as business owners. Whether they have privately hired somebody to create a video or say like their bank has chosen to highlight them in their business. So sharing their stories, both effectively and efficiently through video, I think would be really great to connect the consumer and the providers and build our small businesses even more and make them more successful.
So a little bit off script maybe is just, you mentioned something I'm interested in is trying to figure out how to reach people, right? And that personal connection is important. How do you do that today with everything online or on devices or?
Yes, that's a really good question, especially because I am a virtual business owner. I don't have a brick and mortar building office, and so it is really about either showing up and making a name for yourself in the community, being as active as you can be, or having that social media presence, or a combination of both. It's challenging because you have to have, well, if you're relying on social media, you've got to build a following, and that can be really hard depending on what you're trying to convince people to purchase from you, whether good or service. So good question. I wish I had all the answers, but I think that's why everyone's hiring their marketing experts these days.
Sure. So what's the biggest challenge you face? Is that it? I mean, is it connection?
It is. For me, it is connecting with my ideal clients organically. And my ideal clients are professionals in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who are in six-figure incomes. And so I've tried, and I do it continuously. I'm an active member of the community, and I try to find those people. It just seems like we don't have enough places or events where people go, where I can connect with them. So I know that our community is working really hard to make it more attractive for young professionals so that they stay and they thrive in our community. So yes, that is super challenging. I think for me personally, and probably for others who are trying to connect with that younger demographic within our community.
Okay, so kind of that social infrastructure, social amenities.
Yes.
What about, or maybe describe the reliance or importance of broadband? We've talked with utility companies through this process too, and how important expanding broadband for somebody in trying to get started with it, either in your field or similar. What is that importance to you?
It's crucial.
Yeah.
Internet reliability is top priority. Most of my client meetings are virtual. And so that connectedness, without it, I seem less professional. I'm just not with it. So it is absolutely necessary to have excellent broadband for everybody, I think.
Excellent. So good stuff. So let's talk about the future a little bit, your crystal ball, if you will. So what challenges do you see as a small business owner, or maybe somebody wanting to start their own small business? What's the biggest challenge you see in now or maybe in the next 10 years or so?
I think it goes into that last question of, what's challenging for me, building my business, growing it here, and it's finding those young professionals. And so as I think about the future and expanding Avant-Garde Wealth, we've got a wonderful talent pool at Western Kentucky University, but we're also competing with businesses who are not local, who are in the bigger cities where there's more to do for these young professionals, and they're attracted to those places. So my concern is, how will we keep those top talent students from Western right here in our community to choose Bowling Green instead of going off to Boston, to New York, to San Francisco? I know that's a big, big idea to compete with those cities, but at the same time, if we can make this more of a place where they want to be long term, that would be great for not just my business, but all of the business owners here.
Sure, and the good news is we don't need all of them. We just need a percentage of them,
We just need a few of them to stick around.
That's right.
And really thrive here.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you coming to speak with us and participate in our little project here.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to Objective 4, to support the continuation and strengthening of a high-value local agricultural sector and related economic opportunities. Action item 4.1, explore the increasing demand for alternative management systems as a growth area for the ag sector. 4.2, assist farmers in reducing barriers to selling farm products. Just for example, in our zoning ordinance, you can have a roadside stand at your farm by right. There's no special permissions. And then, of course, we have several farmers markets here in the area that farmers can sell their goods in. 4.3, support and enhance agricultural infrastructure. 4.4, support the continuance and expansion of WKU's farm activities. 4.5, allow and encourage agritourism and farmers markets and similar activities. We were unable to connect with our ag extension agent due to the pandemic interference, for lack of a better term. So we will try to get back with them obviously before we finish this update process and look at some of those items. But pulling some things from the USDA Census of Agriculture, farming represents about 1% of Warren County's population, but has an economic impact of over $200 million. That's a nice big number, especially for that small of a population. Number of farms in Warren County, this is a 2017. Again, this was the latest information out. 1,755 farms, over 262,000 acres. Average farm size 149 acres. You can see the market value, the dollar numbers there. About 60 market value products sold, $63,189. So farms per size, I won't read all of that to you. But then the actual sales numbers, you see $111 million there. And then it's broken down by crops and livestock. One question that we do get asked regularly and have answered lately is how much farmland are we losing to zone changes and zoning, basically land use other than agriculture, and that number is about 400 acres a year. We went back and looked at the past 5 years of rezonings, and that's about how many acres that was zoned agriculture was changed to another land use, whether it be for commercial development or residential development. That is at about a rate of 400 acres per year. So something we certainly need to pay attention to and look at. Economic Development Objective 5, endeavor to advance the academic achievement, skills enhancement, and competency of the workforce. We have 2 action items. First is work with local schools and other organizations on workforce training programs that align with recruitment efforts. And 5.2, establish partnerships between schools and employers to provide high school students internship opportunities. And we'll hear more about that now.
So we're here with John Sowards of the South Central Kentucky Workforce Development Board. We very much appreciate you participating in our little endeavor here for the comprehensive plan update. We're looking, of course, still in the economic development chapter, and we're endeavoring to advance the academic achievement, skills enhancement, and competency of the workforce, which pretty much right up your alley there.
It is, yes.
So we just got a few questions here, and we'll just get started. So, okay. How do you do that? How do you advance the academic achievement, skills enhancement, and competency of the workforce?
Sure. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So let me just start by saying that the South Central Workforce Development Board, we are, the bumper stickers, we're your Department of Labor. We serve a 10-county area in South Central Kentucky, and our job is to help match the talents that employers need with people and we're funded to do this through federal Department of Labor dollars. And we want to get employers the talent they need, and oftentimes that involves us helping job seekers get the skills they need. Sometimes they have barriers to employment, and we want to help them overcome those barriers, get skill sets, and get into the workforce. So this is part and parcel of what we do. So there's a couple different ways that we advance academic achievement and skills enhancement. From a broad perspective, we kind of play a convener role in the community, and so we try to convene employers, chambers of commerce, academic institutions to figure out, okay, what are the current skills needed, what are the future, or what are the skills that are coming, what are needed. And really it's so that our educators can kind of hear, hey, here's what employers need, so that they can start building out a curriculum and facilitating a pipeline. So it's just trying to get all the right people in the room to have that conversation, so that whether it's our high schools or our community and technical colleges or university can try to produce some of the talent that we currently need or think we'll need.
What are some of the programs to accomplish that you all do? So I kind of hear two separate things. One is helping train our future workforce, but then maybe retooling some of our existing where needed.
Yeah, I do have Department of Labor dollars for folks that we work with. If they have barriers, we can actually fund people through short-term training, and we do that. Last year we funded 80 people through training. 52 of them went through a CDL program. 4 weeks, get a CDL, go out and make $50,000 a year. It's a tremendous return on investment. We funded over 20 folks into healthcare fields, phlebotomy, certified nursing assistant, certified medical assistant, and so forth. And then we also funded some web development training, some IT that's relevant now and is going to become more prominent in the future. So kind of in a very practical manner, we fund some of this, and we work with our local training providers to provide that training. We fund it, they provide the training, and then we work with the person kind of through the whole process and help get them placed into employment afterwards.
It's awesome. So it's not just necessarily industries, but it's all wherever there's a need for business or commercial.
Yeah, you're asking. Yes, there's some technicalities to that. With the Department of Labor federal dollars,
sure,
there's a lot of strings attached. We do tend to focus here on 5 industries. It's the 5 prominent industries that are high wage, high demand, and high skill. Mm-hmm. So we want to help provide that skill piece. So it's healthcare, it's business IT, construction, transportation, distribution, logistics, and manufacturing. Those are the kind of the 5 that will fund somebody to go into one of those 5 sectors.
So I was able to watch on Facebook Live a recent summit you had. It was Warren County Focus Summit. Yeah. It was very, very interesting, which kind of brings us to the genesis of the next couple of questions. So what are the biggest workforce challenges we're facing today, or maybe how has the workforce changed from the past 10 years to today?
Yeah, so I've been in this line of business for 3.5 years, so I won't go beyond that.
Sure.
But I tell you, the biggest challenge right now is workforce participation. Mm-hmm. There just are not enough people participating in the workforce. This last fall we ran a series of summits across our 10-county region trying to peel that back and understand why aren't people working. There's no singular answer. And so we're still working on that challenge, right? So there's some folks that think that maybe this is just a temporary blip and people will come back to work. We're taking the approach that it's not temporary, that it's probably the new normal. I don't know. I hope not, but we want to kind of assume that it probably is, so that we can tackle it in the right way.
So we got the second part of that as well. What does the future look like then? And of course, it's unknown for a lot of us. But as there's some things you've identified that might be.
Well, certainly we're trying to identify how to address it, and we're also at the same time trying to understand what is the future going to look like. I think. Let me talk about how we're going to try to address it, and then what I also think about what the future, maybe some conjecture on what the future might look like. How we're trying to address it is we're trying to tackle this on a couple of different fronts. Really, this is an attitudinal issue, first and foremost. Like, people just don't want to work. We got to understand what that attitude is and how do we address that attitude. Can we get people, leadership and people that are influential in the community, kind of talk about the merits of work? There's a lot of goodness that comes with work beyond just putting money in your pocket. I mean, there's social benefit, there's self-worth, there's mental benefit aspects to it, and can we get those conversations going? Can we influence or inspire people to want to work? We're talking to employers about what can you guys do better? Can we write? Everybody wants to feel important. Everybody wants to have a sense of purpose. So can we write that purpose into a job description, or can we make people feel that sense of purpose in the line of work they're doing? Whether they're sweeping floors or working on an assembly line or whatever, what we produce matters, but are we articulating that very well? There's some legislative things that need to happen. I mean, there's certainly legislatively things with unemployment and so forth that we need help with from our legislators to perhaps make all the benefits that are out there. When you add all the benefits together, there's no reason in the world anybody's going to work for $14 or $15 an hour, because it cannot compare with SNAP, health care, unemployment, housing assistance. I mean, if you cobble all those together, it's not financially smart to go work for $14 or $15 an hour. It's not. I mean, people can do math, so I think we need to, and a lot of these benefits, it's all or nothing, and we need to go from this kind of cliff model of all or nothing to can we create a model that gives people the help they need, but also weans them off as they go to work, wean them off of some of the government benefits and programs. So.
Is there anything else we need to know?
Okay, kind of conjecture on the future. I mean, I think there's a lot of futurists and folks that look at this and are predicting that 80% of the jobs that are going to exist in 2030 don't exist today. If that's even half true, we're going to see a lot of upheaval and turmoil and changes in the workforce. I think you're going to see if people aren't working, you're going to see an accelerated move towards more robotics, more artificial intelligence. Some of those same futurists, though, when you say, okay, what does that mean? Well, then what is going to be beneficial or lucrative down the road? It's going to be people that can do things robots and artificial intelligence can't, and that's the folks that are in the creative class, the folks that are making things, that are designing things, that are being creative somehow, some way. A lot of that, some of that will be traditional. Some of that is kind of be in the realm of IT and so forth, web design, web development, programming, and things like that. So.
Well, we need to continue to pay attention to the skills needed to create as the workforce transitions and changes.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of my challenges. I mean, I've got to address the workforce challenges of today, but I also feel like it's important that I keep an eye on what the future is going to look like, because we owe it to this community to get our folks ready for 2030. Right, 2030 is only 8 years away. It's around the corner. So. It's trying to anticipate that and have some balance and apply the resources we've got to tackle and help solve today's problems with an eye towards the future.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your participation.
I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet.
Economic Development Objective 6. Take practical steps to maintain and improve the quality of life in Warren County in support of economic development objectives. So action item 6.1, endeavor to maintain a reasonable cost of living, housing and transportation. Consider impact of land use, transportation, and related decision of cost of living. 6.2, continue to implement the Greenbelt System Master Plan to improve multimodality, connectivity, and recreational opportunities. ED 6.2, continue to support the provision of cultural, sports, and entertainment venues and facilities. So concerning this objective, we will hear more from our interviewees.
So we're here with Jeff Reed to continue our talks and questions on our economic development element of our comprehensive plan. And Jeff, I'll let you explain your title and
I'm President and CEO of Arts of Southern Kentucky, which is the management corporation for Southern Kentucky Performing Arts Center, SKYPAC.
Awesome. Good deal. Glad to know that. So we'll just jump right in it. These are just conversation starter questions. So just describe how the arts improve the quality of life in our community.
Well, I always like to use the analogy of, what makes a city great. When we talk about St. Louis, we don't talk about sidewalks or restaurants necessarily. We talk about the arch. It's a piece of architecture, a piece of art. We talk about New York City, we talk about Broadway or the art museums or the many offerings there. And I could go on, but the arts is what makes a city set apart from others. We kind of hope and assume that we'll have good police protection and good schools and good roads. But what really makes a city great, one of the things I would argue, is the arts.
It's the stuff that makes people want to be there and stay there and live there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So just kind of going along with that theme, how does having quality art venues in a community support or relate to economic development?
Well, it keeps people here, hopefully. Instead of going to Nashville, which is an hour away, or Louisville, a couple hours, or even Cincinnati, that have quite vibrant arts programs. We hope that having SKYPAC here and the offerings in the building keeps them here, which means they're going to spend money here at restaurants. Those from far enough away will stay overnight in one of our hotels. It snowballs.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, they're giving that to Nashville. We want them to do it here in Warren County.
Yep. Okay, so we're here with Sherry Murphy, the director of the Bowling Green Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. We thank you for being here, for helping us continue our little project here, looking at our economic development element of our comprehensive plan. Yeah,
I love to talk economic
good
development.
deal. So we're looking specifically at Objective 6, and that is to take practical steps to maintain and improve the quality of life in Warren County in support of economic development objectives. So just kind of the first question to kick us off here is, how do tourism venues improve the quality of life in our community?
Well, I think anyone that has done anything on a Friday or Saturday night can understand how much venues can help with the quality of life for citizens. But what I touch on is how that helps with visitation as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're very fortunate, and there's just such a large cross-section of our local residents enjoying the same thing our visitors like to enjoy. So usually what feeds one group will feed the other as well.
So would you say that these venues, these tourism venues, sometimes we think of as out-of-towners, but do they help in maybe attracting businesses as well?
Very much so. I have found that a lot of businesses, including venue operators, are looking for a certain daytime population. They want to make sure before they open their business that they can garner so much foot traffic into their business. Well, the great thing about tourist visiting is it drives that number up during the days to reach that threshold that those businesses need to see before they're actually open in the community.
Yeah, and daytime populations are usually somewhere near double what your census calculations are.
Yes, it's very nice
Yes.
to see those daytime populations versus just your regular population.
Yeah, can you describe a little bit more about how tourism is economic development?
Tourism is a huge part of economic development. We're constantly coming up and supporting ideas that help communities thrive. It's so much easier to sell a community to visitors when there's lots to do in the community. And like I said, that cross-section exists where residents want to see certain things and visitors want to see certain things. Both want to be wherever it's cool to be. So tourism is just a huge part of the offerings that a community has, just to our regular citizens. Lots of fun things to do in the community is always a selling point for us when we're out at trade shows trying to get people to come visit. They want to know what's fun. What are the locals doing? Just in the last, I would say, 15 years, we get more questions about, well, where do the locals go? What do the locals do? Because not everyone wants to see those tourism hot spots like they used to. So it's very nice to have a community that has a really great mixture.
Interesting, interesting. So let's talk about pre-pandemic,
Yes.
tourism was the third largest industry
Yes.
in Kentucky. So during pandemic, which I wish we could say post-pandemic, but
That's
maybe
what we're
not
hoping
quite
for one
yet.
day.
So describe a little bit about how that dynamic has changed really today.
Sure. Well, in 2019, we were extremely healthy in our visitor trade. For 2019, we saw $272 million in direct tourism spending just within Warren County.
Wow.
And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and as all industries experienced, that number dropped to $208 million.
Wow.
And it could have been much worse than that.
Yeah.
So we felt like we were pretty fortunate being located on the interstate system as we are. I think that helped contribute quite a bit to keeping that number a little bit higher than some of our other counties saw that weren't located right on an interstate such as we are. But it remained healthy. I feel like that just gives us an even greater opportunity to come back strong. 2019 was a very strong, just nationally, it was very strong for the tourism industry overall. We were headed in the right direction, and we feel like we can get there again with just some hard work and planning.
Yeah. So maybe today or last year numbers, if we have those yet, are we trending up? Are we still kind of in that plateau?
It's a little bit in flux. We did see some more outdoor venues being utilized more than ever. A lot of our attractions hit their all-time high because people were really wanting to be outdoors and do fun things outside. So we're thinking that will probably continue on for another year or so until we're able to get the pandemic a little bit better under control, or at least manageable going forward.
Okay, and then maybe in the next 10 years, what do you think we can expect to see?
I expect to see a lot more business offerings. I also expect to see a lot more venue offerings as well. I think people have seen that pent-up demand the last couple of years, so I think we're really going to start to see the tourism area explode going forward as far as what communities are offering, which also means that we have to be very competitive going forward with how we're able to sell our community.
So would you say that would be the biggest challenge that we have as a community, is selling ourselves or creating venues? What would you?
I would say that's a very large challenge ahead of us. We've been so fortunate in the past because we've had so many people with the forethought to develop the things that we're enjoying today. You know, you just don't come up with an idea and it's done tomorrow. That's never how it works. It takes years, sometimes decades, to develop those things that people truly come here to see and do. So I do think that is always an ongoing challenge for us. And something else that's as a challenge as well is, we have lots of different conversations about lots of different things that are going on in the community. So advocacy is a huge challenge for us, for tourism as well. We want to make sure that the funding that we're able to participate in is going for everyone's enjoyment. It is true quality of life projects and not just pet projects for one or two people to enjoy.
Right, gotcha. Variety for a variety of people, but majority of people, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by and talking to us about this, and I look forward
pleasure.
to speaking again later.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Objective ED7, make the most efficient use of infrastructure and public resources. Action item 7.1, expand the availability of high-speed internet and provide the widest access possible. 7.2, periodically evaluate whether infrastructure constraints are inhibiting economic development and employment growth and take steps to address deficiencies. 7.3, plan for future redevelopment of the existing airport property. Of course, that makes the assumption that it's actually moving, which I don't think is maybe the case anymore, but we'll learn more about that when we do our future land use element. 7.4, all governments in the county should collectively increase the community's influence on the state and federal levels. And ED 7.5, coordinate infrastructure investment policies between the cities and the county. And on this objective, we will hear more from our utility partners.
So we're here with Mark Iverson, who's the General Manager of Bowling Green Municipal Utilities, and we're here specifically to talk about our objective under our economic development goal for objective for our comprehensive plan, and it's to make the most efficient use of infrastructure and public resources. So with that in mind, whether it be we want it to be the Mark Iverson hat or the BGMU hat, you take your pick, but we just have a couple questions here as conversation starters. The first one we have is we continue to have fast-paced growth here in Warren County. So what's just the biggest challenge in keeping up with that?
Well, generally speaking, we've been able to keep ahead of the curve. Obviously, BGMU owns and operates the water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant that serves the entire county. And so that's kind of the intersection of a lot of the growth happens with water and sewer infrastructure. And we've been able to keep ahead of that. We've been able to kind of see the pace by which change is happening. A couple things that have kind of landmarks, if I could say it that way. One is our current project at the drinking water treatment plant, adding 50% capacity, moving from 30 million gallons per day to 45 million gallons per day, which is
on
pretty...
Year 2 or 3?
Year 3 should be wrapping up hopefully this time next year. And so that's going to be a great addition. From our perspective, not only does it add capacity, but then it gives us a little bit more breathing room to be able to rehab the existing facility. We don't have that headroom currently.
I see.
And that's a pretty big deal for us, just in terms of stuff doesn't last forever. And so you have to kind of go in and refurbish. And so again, this is a big addition for us. The second thing, and maybe one that's maybe not as well known, is where we've made an arrangement with the U.S. Corps of Engineers that operates the dam upstream at Becker River Lake. In drought conditions, we actually have an allocation at the lake and can call for a release from the lake, send downstream, and essentially replenish our water source. The river, in normal river conditions, has plenty of water to it. In extended drought periods, it was marginal. It wasn't that it would be dry, but we needed to have an ability to replenish that. And so making that arrangement, that was identified back in 2007, a study that was made looking at what options are there. And that was the most cost-effective option was took almost 20 years to kind of make that arrangement with the Corps, but we finally got there.
So hopefully you'll be a little less nervous here.
A little less nervous as it relates to drought conditions and the ability to have raw water that we can then draw out of the river and treat.
Very good. And so you expect we'll have plenty of capacity for the next 10 years and beyond?
And beyond, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good deal. So just in general, what's the most efficient type of development from a utility company's perspective?
Well, so the way I kind of think about, and maybe this is not exactly on point, but one that I'm kind of think a little bit about, whether it's Bowling Green or any community,
Sure.
Is you got to really not let your core hollow out. Maybe that's a Mark Iverson opinion, but I think others you've seen communities where the core decays and everything kind of expands out to the suburbs. I'm a kid that grew up in the suburbs, so I get that, I understand. But you really want to make sure that your core is vibrant and redeveloping. And so that would be, and with that then I think becomes, you've already got the road and utility infrastructure available, and generally the upgrades in capacity, if needed, aren't that problematic to do. And so to me, it seems to be that's from a planning perspective, if I were kind of sitting in your chair, that would be something to encourage, is how do we make sure that segments of town just don't die off and decay, that they're redeveloped, refreshed, maybe becomes a little bit more denser. I recognize that, and that's a trend line. But maybe that's the right thing to do to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck of infrastructure that's already there.
Absolutely. Good deal.
I hope I said that right.
Yeah, no, you're good. So who pays for utility expansions and development? So we have a new subdivision come in, or developer comes in, versus maybe the really big projects. We'll maybe distinguish between those two.
So the stuff that's in the actual development itself is on the developer. So the lines, the basics, if you will, is really on them. Where we don't currently have, BGMU has a policy, I guess I'll phrase it that way, but because we're sort of built out, it doesn't really come into play very often, is where you have to expand sewer. That expansion of the sewer to get to that new development usually falls to the developer, and then you have an opportunity, if there's sort of vacancies in between, that they can cost recover from other development that happens between them and the last place of extension. What doesn't really kind of get addressed is sort of the core upgrades that are needed for additional capacity. So growth pays for itself, but sometimes you have to have that investment in advance of that coming in. And so that falls to the rate base. And it's always a trade-off between, well, should that be on the rate base? Should that be on a development? How does that really get played out? We don't really have a plan for that currently. I know as it relates to the two on water and sewer infrastructure, between us and BGMU, between BGMU and Warren County Water District, as we do projects that add capacity, because our two treatment plants, the water and the sewer plant, serve the entire county, each utility is responsible for its own proportionate share of the need that's driving that capacity addition. So they being the water district, then it falls to them to figure out how they pay for that. Most of the growth is happening in their areas anyway, so really the burden, if I can phrase it that way, falls to many times to the district in terms of its growth and capacity, and then how that's best reflected in the rate structure.
Good. One thing I forgot to write down on the piece of paper, but got to ask you about, I'm sure you hear it all the time, is just fiber, kind of the new utility, if you will.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about your exploration, I guess, into the fiber world and kind of where BGMU's...
Sure. So actually, surprisingly, BGMU's been doing fiber optic communications for 20 years.
Yeah.
It started as and continues to operate exclusively as a commercial enterprise. When I say commercial enterprise, we're focusing on the business, institutional, and commercial customers, and not a residential play. And part of that, right or wrong, I mean, there's always a debate about that. We circle back to that, it seems every 3 or 4 years. Is that a role that we should be playing in residential? When it was a substitute for cable television, that seemed to be, why are we kind of getting into entertainment? The narrative is different now because it is almost kind of utility-like in many ways, where the use of the internet not only does do the entertainment, please, because you can stream anything you want, but also becomes an educational or business at home, work from home type of venture. And so that always sort of circles back. I think what seems to, well, it's a very technologically safe, at least from the standpoint of fiber has all sorts of capacity, and it's just the electronics on either end that can really drive how much throughput. The glass is just unlimited in its capacity. Really, where it's the mobility part that always kind of seems to be at play residentially. How does that factor into how we? It seems odd to me. This might be the wrong question, but it seems odd. At home, we pay many times. I pay for internet delivery through a modem on my cable service, and I pay a data plan on my cell device for the same delivery of internet. Why do I pay for internet twice? It seems odd. Will that technology kind of merge in some way? Residentially, again, commercially, I think this seems a very safe place where we are. Residential, the bigs, if I can phrase it that, AT&T and Spectrum and others are advancing technology. We're never going to be in that space. We could fiber optically, but will the mobility thing really change that? I don't know that it will, but that's kind of always the
Would it be
interesting piece to me.
Sure. Would it be a fair assumption to say that for BGMU's service district, that most of that area is served in some capacity by the private sector in fiber broadband world?
Yes, it is. Now, it's not the availability of fiber from the privates probably isn't very robust inside the city core. It is out in the greenfield areas, I could say it that way, out in the county. In the city core, probably not as much. And so that may be is that unsatisfactory in terms of either capacity or delivery, through the privates as opposed to something that we could provide. I'd like to believe that our service offering in the commercial space is a superior product because not only it's all 100% fiber optic based, but then it's also just a local, people know how to get in touch with us.
Sure.
And may not necessarily get that
Understand.
the other way.
Understand. So what will be our biggest challenge in the next 10 years or even beyond on the infrastructure side?
Well, I'm sure you probably hear this a lot. Will probably be roads, not necessarily utility infrastructure, but road and traffic capacity. I've always kind of described Bowling Green has always been, even through recessions, we've always been able to weather the storm. We don't take big dips. We might slow down a little bit, but we've always had a nice, steady growth pattern. It seems that growth pattern is accelerating some, and maybe a little bit more uncomfortable in terms of that pace compared to what we've normally had. We've always had a manageable pace, at least in my opinion, and it's not unmanageable currently, but it feels like it's a little bit, the ball's picking up speed.
We're trying not to get run over.
We're trying not to get run over, and so how you do that, both in terms of, again, roads always kind of seems front and center, but there's always the amenities and other things that kind of come with that, expectations that your population has that will also be an added challenge. Sure. I think one of the other things from a utility perspective is then just that we're planning and talking and making sure that we're adding transmission and treatment capacity sufficiently at sort of the big picture side of things.
Got it. Well, Mark, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir, Ben. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So we're here with John Dix, who's the General Manager of Warren County Water District, and we're just going to ask you a couple questions here about Objective ED7, make the most efficient use of infrastructure and public resources. So just got some questions here as conversation starters. We continue to have fast-paced growth in Warren County. So what's the biggest challenge in keeping up with all that growth?
I'll tell you, Ben, for the water district, it's trying to make sure that we're able to maintain capacity out in our systems. And that's really twofold. It's a piece of providing what we call the normal domestic demands that every day, and then also it's fire protection, and
Right.
that is a big key for us. And I know that determines in a lot of cases in our system where development falls based on where lines are large enough for fire protection, and we have to balance that with water quality, because we just can't put 8-inch lines throughout every inch of the county because the demands are not there. The domestic demands aren't there to maintain quality. And I think people sometimes forget that quality is as much important as quantity in this
Yes.
case. So, you know, for our challenges moving forward is making sure those infrastructures are in the right spots, and then also keeping up with the substantial increase in demand that we've seen, both industrially and residentially throughout our county, and keeping those developments in the corridors where our strengths are, and that's usually been our challenge. Sometimes they start fading off because in different areas, because where land is priced better. So that's our biggest challenge for right now, Ben.
Yeah, that's so important and become key as part of our conversation when we get to the community facilities and talk about infrastructure and how our future land use is roughly tied to infrastructure. So whenever we talked a lot about expansions, and you guys, the Warren County Water District deals with this more than maybe BGMU about those expansions and developments. So when a new subdivision comes in, or even a new industry, and it's requires upgrades to either water or wastewater, who pays for those?
Yeah, when a subdivision comes in and we identify that we don't have that capacity, we do present those costs to the developer. The developer is expected to pay for those costs, the impacts of his development on our overall system. Those are localized. We're not going to make a developer pay for a major upgrade at a plant or a pump station, but if he's got to upsize lines to get capacity to his proposed development, he's going to pay for those.
Yeah, that's it. So then the bigger projects, if you will, where you need to upgrade the major trunk lines, or how does that kind of work?
And that's where we've identified and we just completed our own capital improvement plan, where we've identified areas throughout Warren County where we've got to beef up our transmission infrastructure, and that's to keep up with multiple developments that have gone on in both commercial, industrial, and residential. So we've got those, and we'll have to acquire funding for that. Either that'll be through debt service, which the ratepayers will end up paying for, or if there are grants available. They're very limited right now, but if those are available, we'll utilize those to the best of our ability there.
Since I'm a planner, I'm going to ask a planning question now. What's from a utilities perspective, what is the most efficient type of development?
For us, the most efficient development is, once again, I'm going to focus along our transmission corridors, and that's our major arterials of Nashville Road, Russellville Road, and even 230, Highway 231, and then Louisville Road on the north side. Those are when developments are along those corridors, those are very efficient for us to serve because we have the infrastructure and the capacities in place. It's when we deviate off of those that it becomes more challenging.
Would it be a fair statement to say that it's easier to, maybe not easier, but you can correct me with the right term, better to serve more density rather than less, so maybe one house per square mile versus a whole bunch of houses per square mile, or is that?
Well, it's obviously more efficient for us for higher density because you just basically get more customers per linear mile of water line, and that's obviously the most efficient. A few challenges those present, though, those do eat up a lot of capacity in a small footprint, and also multifamily developments have higher requirements for fire protection than your normal residential. So there's little pluses and minuses to both. You then have to provide 600 gallons a minute versus 250. So that does make a big difference on where those can fall.
Right. So I guess what I hear you saying, it's not as simple as just saying right there's good and there's not. It kind of depends.
High density is great, and we do like to do that, but it does have its own unique challenges there too.
So from kind of the water district's utilities perspective, what's going to be our biggest challenge the next 10 years and beyond?
For us, it's really finding the funds to keep up with the growth, because we're going to have to invest tens and tens of millions of dollars in our system over the next really 10 to 20 years. The 10-year plan is really heavily loaded, and you could easily spend $40 to $50 million, and that's a lot of expense for a system. And the bottom line is we've got to find ways to fund that and make it affordable for our customers. We have one of the lowest rates in the region, and we want to maintain that. And that's always good for our customers. Water is a great value, and when you can get a gallon of water delivered to your house for less than a penny, you're looking pretty good. Especially if you're looking at the gas pumps.
Especially clean water, right?
That's
clean,
exactly
good water.
Right. That's
Well,
right.
it sounds like there's going to be plenty of discussions need to be had soon, and find that balance of the cost versus the benefit. So, John, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me.
All right. So we're here with Dewayne McDonald, President and CEO of Warren Rural Electric Co-op, and we appreciate you participating with us on our little fun project here. So we're on economic development objective number 7, to make the most efficient use of infrastructure and public resources. And so just a couple conversation starter questions here. So we continue to have fast-paced growth in Warren County, as you all are well aware. What is the biggest challenge in just keeping up with that fast-paced growth?
Well, first off, we're fortunate for that, so I think we're extremely fortunate in our area and our community to have the growth we've had. So we want to do everything we can to meet that and keep that going. But especially from a utility infrastructure perspective, or from ours, and this is a timing issue right now, but the biggest issue with the growth is really for us has been supply chain. So there's other things that come in that, manpower and all. We're not oblivious to any of that, and we're not immune to any of that. But the biggest issue we see right now in keeping up with the growth is supply chain issues.
Wow, yeah, it's been tough on everybody, and hopefully we'll see some end to that. But it's not looking too good right now.
It doesn't seem like it's anytime soon. We've seen from some stuff you just can't even get. Some material-wise, just impossible to get, or if you can, the lead times have gone, doubled, tripled.
Have we experienced any significant delays in local projects due to that?
Fortunately, so far, we've not experienced any delays. Early on, we saw some of this, saw it coming, and we've stored up on material ahead of time. Now that can only last so long, and we hope we covered enough. But so far, we've covered to the point to be able to keep from that happening. But
very good.
That seems to be changing daily, though.
So when we have these developments, and specifically, I guess, talking about subdivisions or even commercial developments, who pays for those improvements required to the electric system?
It's somewhat of a complex question or answer when you get into it, but I'm gonna boil it down. It's really kind of on the surface. It's kind of easy to explain. There's some special scenarios where there's certain requests made. It's something outside the norm or something like that that gets into a little more detail. But for the most part, all of our infrastructure builds are covered from rates. So if there's a new development, new subdivision, just our growth in general overall is normally, there's not additional charges for that. That's covered just under the rate system.
Very good. Good. So one, I guess the recent, not real recent probably anymore, but kind of the extra utility we talk about, broadband, as I'd like to start thinking of that as utility now. Why don't you describe a little bit of recent efforts and partnerships that you guys have had in expanding broadband in Warren County?
Well, it starts, and I appreciate you asking that question because it is amazing. Just everywhere you go today, that topic comes up. The topic of broadband, the need. If there's anything the pandemic's highlighted, it's the need for our members and the public to have reliable, high-speed internet service to be able to allow them to the students or the members to do their work from home. So that's just becoming a bigger issue each day. And so that's one that our board and our management team several years back, started even before the pandemic got here, started looking at and how can we help our members through? How can we help? What kind of resource can we be to spur that along? So we actually had partnered with a telephone cooperative, North Central NCTC, North Central Telephone Cooperative, and they're based out of Tennessee, but they're located in Scottsville, Kentucky. They have an office in Scottsville, and so partnering with them, we were able to move much faster than we would have if we'd done it on its own. We also utilized the strengths of both organizations. We had the background and the knowledge of all of the cabling and the wiring and the system, the poles. We all had that asset. They had the asset of lighting it, going into the members' home and servicing them and all. So we've, as far as our growth, we started out with a pilot project, and if you remember, probably in the Boyce area, and then that went really well. We had really good member engagement and feedback from that and sign up. So there's been two major things that's happened since then that's allowed us to keep expanding, and we're expanding at a quick rate right now. The first one came from an FCC auction. It was called RDOF auction that actually they have areas that needed the service and then it didn't have adequate speeds. And so it was a funding option to help fund to move that forward. So we were fortunate enough to win a little bit of that, some of that in Warren County, and then the Warren County Fiscal Court. So they actually they knew the areas that was covered by that, or was going to be covered by that, and others that won some areas. So they actually had the foresight and went to see how can we get to the rest of the county covered now. So they did an RFP and opened it up to help with funding to go even further. So at this point, we're building as fast as we can, hooking up members as fast as we can, and within the next couple of years, at most, it's actually like a 2-year project that should get, whether it's us in the areas we won or it's the other utilities that's going to be covering other areas, should cover the full county.
That's awesome. Of course, this is the economic development chapter we're talking about, and one of the fastest ways to either get extra income or grow new businesses is a lot of times out of homes, out of garages or whatever, and almost everybody starts off selling that over internet and at home. So I think it's extremely important.
Well, it's. I know we're talking about Warren County right now, Ben, but it's for us. Of course, we serve many more, and it's not just a Warren County issue. Right. So we're working and we've got a pretty big build out project in Grayson County, and we've won some areas in Evanston County, Simpson County. So all the counties surrounding us, Butler and all, we're doing what we can in those as well to move that along. So
one of things I've always been told or thought of is, it's a utility whenever you lose it and don't have it, and realize real quick you can't live without it very long. And I think broadband certainly becoming that, just like electricity. So we definitely appreciate your efforts, along with fiscal courts and everybody else is expanding that service. So just kind of, I guess the closing question is, what do you think will be our biggest challenge, or maybe even your biggest challenge the next 10 years or even beyond?
You know, it's fast as our community is growing, I don't see that stopping anytime soon. Our local chamber and all has done a tremendous job, really, of bringing in industry. Mm-hmm. And then when you bring in industry, you have to have not only you have to have the infrastructure to cover the industry, but you're having the infrastructure. You're going to bring in people to work those jobs and live in the community, and then this just helps the community as a whole. So I think one of the going to be the toughest thing is, how do we best position ourselves and how do we plan for those next 10 years to where the infrastructure is going where it's needed to be.
Right. So
we want to be as efficient as we can be, and have and manage that growth we can to where we don't want to waste the money over here if the people want to go in this area. So and how do we and along with that, not only the positioning and how we all work together, but do we have it there early enough to meet the needs?
Right.
And that's going to be the biggest challenge in the next 10 years.
Absolutely. Couldn't said it better myself, and we appreciate you all as a partner and hope to continue to work together to get all this taken care of the best we can. So thank you very much.
Our next objective, number 8, is to support expansion of economic opportunities to disadvantaged persons and to geographic areas that have historically underperformed economically. We have 2 action items. First, to continue to pursue state and federal grants to improve the business climate in disadvantaged parts of the community. And the second, utilize targeted financial assistance, incentives, and technical support to encourage reinvestment in older commercial properties. And to hear more on this, we have invited our friends from the city.
So we're here to continue our conversation on our economic development element of the comprehensive plan, and we're focusing on Objective 8, which is to support expansion of economic opportunities to disadvantaged persons and to geographic areas that have historically underperformed economically. We're here with Leyda Becker, who is our International Communities Liaison, and Brent Childers, who's Director of Neighborhood and Community Services with the City of Bowling Green. So, Brent, if we just start with you and talk maybe a bit about what steps the city has taken to try and expand economic opportunities to some of our economically depressed areas.
Mm-hmm. So several years ago, the city set about looking at portions of town that have probably underperformed economically or have neighborhood issues at greater concentration. And we call this area the Bowling Green Reinvestment Area. It's primarily the bypass west to the city limits all the way out to the river. So it's about 6 census tracts. And we looked at this area based on the age of housing, the lower levels of home ownership, higher concentration of minorities, lower income levels, and really said, okay, we need to focus some attention in this area. And so we're trying to drive investment into this area. And so we use a variety of public investment methods. Mm-hmm. Most recently, what we really try to focus in on is our CDBG, our annual allocation from HUD, and we target one neighborhood area at a time. And that might be a census block group or a couple of census block groups, but where we can really focus in. And what that allows us to do is really improve the overall neighborhood environment so that it improves the opportunity for new investment, new private investment. And so we'll address housing issues, we'll address pedestrian issues, road issues, park issues, things that just make the area more attractive for investment. The other thing we did is leveraging this Bowling Green Reinvestment Area. We've been able to leverage other monies to the tune of about $8 million in other public investment to improve roads, parks, travelways, things like that. But also we got a designation as an opportunity zone. Census Tract 102 is an opportunity zone designated under the Federal Jobs and Tax Cut Act of December 2017. And so what that allows is for outside private investment to leverage capital gains, tax deferrals for investments in that area. So the city set about a marketing campaign and educating investors about opportunities of investing in the Opportunity Zone, and just trying to leverage that. So we're continuing to do that and continuing to move forward to create better opportunities, to create better mechanisms for private investment to invest in some of these areas, to create job opportunities, to create better housing opportunities, and those are the things that we're looking at.
Good. Leyda, what about our international community, our new Americans that come to our community? What opportunities are we helping them with?
Yeah, I think my position was created 10 years ago, exactly. And so as the city invested in a dedicated position to serve new Americans, and it took, several years to kind of get a grasp of the growth of the population, we saw an 87% increase in our foreign-born population in the city within a 5-year period, 2011 to 2016. So we were coming to terms with how diversified our community was getting to be. And then we thought, we need to be more strategic about how we serve this population. And not only, even though the city has a dedicated position, it's really a multi-sector approach. Right. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to invest some funding as a city, and then we were awarded some funding by 2 national organizations. So we created a strategic plan, and it is focused on building our economy. And the focus is primarily on creating workforce opportunities and seeing how new Americans fit into the workforce, what challenges and opportunities arise for creating more, not just local opportunities, but leveraging those local opportunities so that we can ensure the new Americans are contributing to the labor force. And then entrepreneurship. Our immigrant and refugee community, our new Americans, are highly entrepreneurial. That was probably not an original goal for the city or something that we had, thought intentionally that would happen, but as a result of new Americans seeking opportunities to expand businesses and small businesses, and we've seen a substantial growth in those small business opportunities. That's where we thought, okay, we need to be more strategic about how do we connect existing resources to new Americans who want to be able to capitalize on that American dream of being their own boss, because that's part of the American dream.
That's right, absolutely.
and so that's why we launched the strategic plan in 2020. It was a multi-sector strategic plan. We had a steering committee with members in support from the South Central Workforce Development Board and the Chamber of Commerce, who were our partners actively with that process. And we are now in the implementation mode. And so we have 22 different recommendations and under a sector on building inclusive economies. And so right there, we have done quite a bit of work over the last 10 years. And so now that we're looking at the next 10 years, we're looking at how do we implement these strategies. And that strategic plan it's a live document. It's constantly changing. We're constantly looking at how to improve, whether the recommendations are still valid recommendations or we need to think about other strategies that are more applicable. And as we're welcoming new neighbors, I mean, we now we're going to be getting up to 350 Afghans. This is a population that we did not anticipate having prior to 2020. Nope. We had not foreseen having that population change, new language group, and so it's exciting.
But there's also a constant evolution of the population.
Right.
We've had this transition of different population groups based on what's going on in the geopolitical sphere. And so, in the 70s, it was the Vietnamese based on the conflict there. Then in the 90s, transitioned into Bosnia, and then we transitioned into some of the Congolese and the Burmese and now the Afghans. So it just creates this wide swath of diversity that is coming into our community. And we don't know what the next group's going to be in the 10 years. 5 years ago, we didn't know the Afghans were going to be here. Yes. And now in 10 years, we really have no idea what's those next populations are going to be. And there's so many other global factors that are going to dictate that. We just kind of have to wait and see, but we're building the structure.
Right.
And the opportunities, that's the main thing, is having those in place now and building those over the last several years so that whatever that population group coming in is, we have the capacity to serve as a community. I think that's really what we've done over the last several years.
Very cool. One of my, I guess, personal experience, just walking into a sign shop. We were having some signs made for the planning commission, and we were talking to the sign maker, and he was doing some signs for one of the local industries, and it was kind of your interior signs, OSHA signs, those types of things. And he was having to do with them in 6 different languages because that's you just employ that many different cultures. It was very neat to see kind of that firsthand experience when you don't always get
and you don't think
connected to
about
that.
a city like Bowling Green, in South Central Kentucky, being such a diverse community with cultures represented all over the world. Whenever we talk to people from outside, they're really amazed. They're like, that's here. We're like, yes, it's here. It's very rich. It's very out there. It's very, you see it in the businesses, you see it in the factories, you see it in the schools, you see it in, it's part of the community. It's part of who we are.
Yeah, very cool. So what do you all see as the kind of our biggest challenge, maybe in the next 10 years and beyond? What's the hardest thing to do about serving either the international communities? Maybe we'll start there and then move to maybe the economically depressed areas.
I think, being able to equip other organizations to have the capacity to serve our new American population, there are resources available in our community. We have plenty of resources. And so it's ensuring that there is that access. Always talking about access to those resources. And access can look very differently depending on the population you serve. But typically where there's a breakdown is with language. That's typically our biggest challenge is how do we really reach out to the populations, especially as diverse, language diversity, and then effectively be able to serve when there is a language barrier. And even though there is a language barrier, new Americans are not intimidated to take risks. They're able to take risks. They become homeowners over a very short period of time. They're opening up businesses, and perhaps, the average American would say, I'm not ready yet to take that risk, of investing, capital and opening up a business. I've got to do my market research. I've got to do my business plan. And we have new Americans who are saying, I'm ready today. And so it's kind of like, okay, how do we make sure that there is access across the board and not just within one organization? So that's our biggest challenge. I mean, language, it'll continue to be a challenge because it's impossible to make sure that we have just, individuals who speak every language in every organization.
You're talking about 90 different languages, including the dialects. I mean, you can't have that resource always available.
No.
And you think back 10 years ago, how limited was access for those new Americans coming into access services, even in city government, before you started, before you created things. And you think about now how much more access there is. Think about what the next 10 years is going to bring about creating access across our partner organizations, across the city and the community.
Yeah, so that's typically the biggest challenge. Our challenge with workforce is trying to keep our labor force locally. I mean, the city just invested in a media campaign highlighting the benefits of working locally. And what we did not anticipate was losing significant portion of our new American labor force to other markets outside of Bowling Green. Primarily outside of Kentucky, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And these other employers have been very aggressive in building pipelines for new Americans and capitalizing on that before we kind of realized, as a community, we need to do that actively. And so now we're trying to kind of backtrack and seeing how do we make sure that our local labor force, and here's the biggest thing, I mean, we are serving the populations with all of our municipal services. And so our biggest concern is if you're not working in Bowling Green, but yet when a natural disaster happens, like a tornado, who are these families turning to? They're not turning to their employer outside of Bowling Green. They're not going to that state knocking on the doors for assistance. They're still asking for assistance from us. And so I think there needs to be a mutual benefit as we are. But maybe folks are just not they're not intentional. They're thinking, okay, I'll get a paycheck, I've got a job, and that's what I need. They're not looking at the bigger picture, and so a lot of it is educationally. And you when you have an emergency, you call 911, and that's paid by by taxes, local tax dollars. But if you don't work in Bowling Green, you don't contribute to that service. And so so that's kind of the labor force challenges with new Americans, and it will continue to evolve and emerge as we are trying to figure out strategies of better serving that population. And then, of course, probably I'll toss it over to Brent for that, but transportation. I mean, transportation challenges continue to be an issue with new Americans. Just the barrier first of access, getting a driver's license. And that goes back to language. But again, limited infrastructure for transportation services. And that's, a challenge that I can't address single-handedly, but we're trying to work on that as well.
Yeah, and talking about transportation, that's an ongoing topic. And of course, the city does have the transit system. The city is continuing to evaluate what is the best way to deliver that service. There's opportunities for expansion, but expansion comes at a cost. The feds are heavily subsidizing that service, but there's still a local component, and the city puts hundreds of thousands of dollars into that service every year. And so it's trying to balance out how do you build this when in an ever-changing dynamic community.
Right.
This is not a static community where it's a very dense, compact, and you can run 4 routes and keep everything going. As the community continues to grow and evolve, and it's expanding, and it's not expanding symmetrically, it's expanding very node-like. And so how do you run these routes, and how do you run the movement of people? That's the ongoing challenge at a cost-effective rate. That you can do it, but how much resource are you willing to put into it? And that's where the city finds itself in this balance. So we've undertaken new structures, and so we're addressing some of the foundational issues related to transit. So then we can build off of that and really look at, okay, how can we change some of the service? The COVID pandemic really took a toll on transit, as it did many other industries and many of our businesses here locally. But now we're trying to decide how many are people going to get back on the bus after the pandemic, and that's a nationwide transit issue. Transit organizations across the country saw that too, and we saw a 50% cut to our ridership, and that has stayed flat this whole time. So we're trying to kind of keep up with this evolution of how people need to move, but we know we need to do better. We know we don't have it solved. We know we're not where we want to be, but we're always willing to change. We're willing to adapt, and that's really where it comes down to. The big challenge that I see related to the community is keeping up with that dynamic change. As we see things move so fast, and then you have these outside influences like the pandemic, like the tornado. This target out here is constantly moving and shifting. And that's really the challenge. This is by no means a static community. So how do we continue to invest in understanding all the challenges that we have, but also understanding that we're in the talent attraction business. We're trying to build a community. This is what we do, is try to build the best community we can to attract talent, to address the labor shortages and the workforce issues, to continue to grow economically, to continue to have diversity of housing, to continue to have good park systems and transportations. How do all those ecosystems come together to build what we call community? And so we're constantly looking for new project ideas. We're constantly developing new opportunities to create that, to create this next thing. But then it feels like as soon as you get down that path, the whole world changes and you got to shift again. But we just try to stay nimble. We try to stay focused on what is the best thing for the community.
Right.
And if we can stay focused on that, I feel comfortable that we're able to shift and adapt as it comes along.
Absolutely. Well, appreciate you both stopping by and participating in our little
Thanks for having
project
us.
here. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Objective ED9 is to strengthen the position of downtown Bowling Green as a community focus of economic activity. So our action items here, 9.1, support new and existing cultural and entertainment venues. 9.2, improve the availability of information on tourist attractions, especially downtown. 9.3, consider the need for tourist support facilities, hotels, restaurants, and so on, when making land use and zoning decisions. Quick note about that, we have done quite a bit of adjustment in our downtown areas, looking for mixed uses and reducing parking requirements, making different types of residential housing available. And then last, 9.4, encourage the provision of additional residential, retail, and office in downtown, especially mixed uses and live workspaces. So as I just mentioned, we're trying to meet these action items. For more on this, let's talk to the city staff again about their efforts.
So we're here to continue our discussion on the economic development element. We're on objective ED9, to strengthen the position of downtown Bowling Green as a community focus of economic activity. We're here again with Brent Childers, Neighborhood and Community Services Director for the City of Bowling Green, and newly hired Telia Butler, our Downtown Development Coordinator. Just start the conversation off with a question. Just kind of describe the city's recent efforts to reinvest in and strengthen downtown.
Yeah. So in the last several years, what you really saw was a focus on the infrastructure. We started with a goal of rebuilding the streetscape in and around Fountain Square Park. So we made it more accessible, more walkable, created more landscaping, more street trees, really to just kind of define some of the parking areas and improve the pedestrian feel, because we see that the pedestrian impact is going to be more impactful moving forward. And so we wanted to build that infrastructure. So we looked at our alleyways and our trailways and some of the areas around. We even expanded Fountain Square Park. So that's really the biggest game changer in downtown in the last several years. And now we've moved that even further down to Circus Square Park with completion of phase 2. So what that's going to allow to do is kind of take that theme, that streetscape theme, all the way down for more blocks. And what we're going to do moving forward is kind of move to other blocks with the goal of building this out to kind of really create that sense of place in and around the downtown. The other thing that the city's done is we've created a position. So you see Telia here today. She started with us here in December of 2021. So now for the first time there's going to be a city staff person devoted to downtown. So she's the Downtown Development Coordinator, just kind of getting into the groove of building this new program. So not only is the city continuing to invest in the infrastructure side, we're investing in the people side and building relationships with the business owners, the soon-to-be business owners down there, the property owners, and really trying to build downtown as a place, as a destination. That's really the ultimate goal here.
Awesome, awesome. So what do you see happening in the next few months or few years or whatever? I mean, what you got in store for us?
You want to start? You want me to start?
Ideas. I understand ideas.
Okay,
I'll tag along.
Really trying to continue to invest on the infrastructure side. That's not going to go away. So as we finish phase 2, we'll start the planning for phase 3 and so on. So that now is starting to really bring in the vibrancy and the amenities. Several years ago, whenever the ballpark was built and SKYPAC was built and Circus Square was built, you created these destinations. Now it's about bringing all those things together. And now you're starting to see the residential component with new apartment complexes coming in downtown. A couple more under construction, a couple more completed, with more coming, hopefully down the line. So now it's about how do we build those connections? How do we build the sense of desire to be downtown? Not just to live, not just to work, but to be there for entertainment, and really looking at how do we build this arts and entertainment in the focus of downtown. But to us, downtown is bigger than that too. Downtown is also extends down to the river. Mm-hmm. And how do we build that vibrancy and sense of place all the way down to the river with the upcoming riverfront project? The city's been working for the last several years to really take that 70 acres of land that the city owns right along the river on River Street, used to be called Old Local Road, and build a destination park to really be the anchor to drive and be a catalyst for investment in downtown. So we'd have that along the riverfront, and then as you come up through downtown to hit the Fountain Square Park area, that arts and entertainment area, and then all the way up to the hill with the university. And so that's really what I see.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything left?
Well, only a month into this position, I'm trying to learn all the things and all the nuances, but I come from Bowling Green, born and raised here, WKU alum, and I've spent the past 10 years of my career in some kind of tourism marketing, destination marketing type positions. At the Visitors Bureau, I promoted Bowling Green as a destination, so now I get to laser in my focus on marketing and communicating downtown to be this destination. And like Brent said, we've got all the pieces of this infrastructure and attractions, restaurants, bars, retail, and now residential, and all of these put together already are a destination. We just have to tell that story.
Right.
And that's what I'm here to do.
Good. That's awesome. So sounds like we are going to go into a phase of getting everybody together and kind of really working together as, we'll say more of a team, but it really is some of that.
And I think everybody has a desire for downtown to be a strong place. I mean, I think the city, the county, the university, the chamber, all these different institutional players all desire for the downtown to be a strong place. But, we got to work together. We got to figure all that out. What is the best course of action for Bowling Green's downtown? What are the assets that we have, and how do we tell, like Telia said, our story? That's what's important. People want to know what your story is, not the story of somebody else. They want to know your town story, and we got to figure out the best way to tell that.
So in 10 years, or in the future, where are we going to be, or where do we hope to be?
You want to start, or you want me to start?
You start.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see the continued investment in residential. I see continued investment in retail, small business. I see more of that spreading towards the river. I see that it really being riverfront focused for some level with more investments there, and kind of coming back together with that arts and entertainment area focused in around Fountain Square Park as the central arts and entertainment area. But then you just start seeing more activities and more vibrancy. You can go to a community and just feel the energy of a community, and that's what we need to capitalize on. And really, how do we create that energy whenever people are in and around the downtown? And so I think that's the pieces that'll be coming in the next 10 months. And it's going to be this project that led to this project that led to this project, and then we're going to look back and go, it took all of this. It's not going to be one central project. Right.
Let's see. There's the local residential aspect of this, and there's also the tourism visitor aspect of this. And in the years to come, I want to see all of the other tourist attractions in Bowling Green getting more cohesive with downtown. Corvette clubs and visitors, Lost River Cave clubs and visitors that come there. Anyone coming down to Mammoth Cave is going to stop in Bowling Green, and they're going to hang out in downtown, and they're going to shop, they're going to dine, and hopefully they will stay the night. And it comes down to the destination storytelling and communicating both with locals and residents the expectations of what we want our people to do downtown, and then letting our downtown showcase what we have.
So, yes, I think sounds like we got an excellent foundation, good plans moving forward. So I think we ought to be able to implement this objective a lot more here coming up than maybe in the past. So excellent. Glad you all could both be here to enlighten us on this.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
And last but not least is ED Objective 10, to coordinate the efforts and share informational resources among the various entities involved in economic development. Action item 10.1, the local government should establish partnerships with private and nonprofit organizations to gather economic data to improve decision making. Hopefully this exercise that we've done here in the interviews is part of us accomplishing that. ED 10.2, establish formal communication channels with local businesses, the Chamber, WKU, and the Ag Extension. Again, hopefully we're working on that. We can obviously do better on this 10.2, and we're committed to doing so. 10.3, coordinate with local business groups to make information on existing resources and financing programs readily available. You heard a lot about that through our interviews in this video. And then our last action item, 10.4, continue to to develop and maintain the community's online GIS and make data available nationally. All of the information and efforts that we've put into our GIS system in the past couple of years is available anywhere that anyone has access to the internet. So we're looking to continually build those. We do have a partnership that is becoming more formalized with the city, the county, and the planning commission, and other partners, local utilities. We hope to continue to foster that and grow that, and make strides in that regard. So hopefully we're accomplishing that.
We're here again with Ron Bunch to kind of take a look at our last objective in the economic development element of the plan, and that is to coordinate the efforts and share informational resources among the various entities involved in economic development. And we're happy to be a part of that when we're able, obviously. We work well together, and it seems like a week doesn't go by we don't talk to each other these days, which is excellent for the community. So, you know, what other efforts does the Chamber do in kind of getting this community to come together for the benefit of economic development?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to layer this a little bit.
Sure.
I don't know that people really realize. Targeted businesses are pursued everywhere in the country aggressively.
Right.
And so the game we're playing in is a game of being eliminated. These companies are not coming here to become part of our community. They're coming here to find the best place for them to be profitable now and in the future. And so their job when they're here is to eliminate communities so they get down to the one that really fits what they need.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Yeah, because everybody's offering incentives.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's offering
and more aggressive
similar
incentives
amenities.
than
Right.
Kentucky.
Sure. So,
Now, having done this in 3 other states before I came here, Kentucky is a very conservative state with more minimal incentives. And so when you have that disadvantage,
sure.
I want people to understand that the way our team comes together has been the difference maker. The permitting folks, our planning folks, our utility folks, our existing businesses, our contractors. That whole team comes together in a moment's notice, and we may have 3 hours with a client that's investing $100 million because they're going to 3 other states and 7 other sites. And we have to make an impression in a very short period of time, and our team works very well together. It's very well oiled, but it's not just a sales pitch. Our team stays together and helps them get buildings built. Like, so the Ball project, we showed a site that wasn't really a site. We showed a field that didn't even have a road. And so we had a contractor that volunteered to put in a road just so we could show the property. There was no water, sewer, electric. There was nothing to this site.
No zoning.
None of that existed. But the team came together to make it all happen. And that project is probably one of the fastest projects I've ever seen go from groundbreaking to operation. You know, from March to September, they built 500,000 square feet, put equipment in it, and began operating during a pandemic. Unheard of. But they couldn't do that if all of our utility partners didn't get stuff put in, if we didn't design, bid, build roads, if y'all didn't get the approvals for permitting. I mean, all the parties came together seamlessly and all doing their best to meet a timeline that was faster than anything I've seen in almost 30 years of successful economic development. And so our team works really well together here, and I think we just got to keep building on that. Probably the part that a lot of others don't see is, again, the talent team. I mean, how that talent team comes together is critically important. We're good. We need to become great at that, and we need to engage even the private sector talent players. So we have 18 to 20 staffing firms here. They play an important role supporting our business base. So I think, you know, going forward, a key aspect will be for the workforce board really to rally public and private in more of a real-time, frictionless, demand-driven system. And I think the key part we got to do is kind of twofold, given that labor force participation rates have declined the last 2 decades in the U.S. and especially worse in Kentucky. We've got to help people get back into employment that are in our community but not participating. And so that's going to take a variety of tactics and really working together closely. And the other part is we don't have enough people here just because you've had the aging and retirement of the baby boomers that accelerated during the pandemic. So the people we had retired faster than we thought, creating a gulf that we now have to get people to move to Bowling Green and Warren County to fill. So those 2 tactics and the convening of the various parties is a new opportunity for us from a talent perspective to really come together and use common data and really have mutual accountability to one another. That's the biggest thing.
Sure.
And then last, many people don't realize that, you know, as we look at economic development, we look at it more like a mutual fund. So we're going to be successful in a traditional economic development and the diversification part, but there are many other players we work with, the Small Business Development Center, the Innovation and Commercialization Center. So there's a whole U.S. Commercial Service, World Trade Center on exports and stuff, Manufacturing Extension Partnership. There's a litany of organizations that have little pieces of an overall economic development plan. And through SKY1, which is our umbrella brand for all those entities, you'll see more over the next decade of how that comes together and begins contributing more to created jobs, invested capital, sales. And so, you know, starting up companies, and I'm not talking about, we still need to start up restaurants, dry cleaners, those other things that the community needs, but I'm talking the startup of technology-based firms where you have innovation that then becomes, you know, like temperature testing. Things like that, where there's a market that is created, and then you have somebody execute and take advantage of that market and then scale locally to globally.
So is it more about we've kind of got a holistic approach in some senses, but it's coordinating the components of that to make sure they sequence correctly?
That is a fact, but the other parts I would add to that is our economic development core system is mature. We've been nationally ranked for 8 years in a row. We know how to do that well, and we've performed consistently. It's more of a steady state. The talent supply system is still startup stage. We need it to become mature and have repeat performance. And then the same thing with those other entities. We're more in early stage, startup stage. So over the next decade, it's really having those become mature, producing consistent performers for us. Does that make sense?
It does, it does. Well, Ron, I appreciate all your work and appreciate you including us in all of the fun too. It's we're doing great things here, and one thing I think, and you kind of mentioned that, is just other communities I've been part of, you always get the sandboxes and don't necessarily get that coordination. And I know you've mentioned that too in other places you've worked. But we work really well together here, and I think that is why we have been so successful. So
there's no doubt in my mind. People need to see that the work you do is really filling the shelves for the product we need to be successful. We're like the sales arm in a lot of respects. You're the make sure we have the inventory to sell. And so it's critically important to work in a relationship, and it's worked really well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what's next? We'll have our discussion on this session and this video on Tuesday, February 8th at 5:30 p.m. in the Capitol Arts Building. Not exactly sure what we're going to do except public input. Show up, ask questions. We'll answer them the best we can. We'll attempt to get some of our partners there and answer questions too. You can always email questions or comments to us, planninginfo@bgky.org, subject of session 3. If you want to submit something for us to specifically address at this meeting. And then moving on into March, once we complete session 3, We will start looking at session 4, which are natural and cultural resources review. We'll kind of look at current, future trends and concerns, and look at, a number of different things. So stay tuned. And then, of course, we'll follow that with a similar in-person discussion, public and answer session. And then resources, we're still developing those for that once we get there, but certainly we'll have the natural and cultural resources element of the comp plan available. And then we hope to have a few other resources outside of city government available as well. So stay tuned there. As always, you can contact us about this process at any time by any of these methods. Follow us on Facebook or Twitter. Of course, we have our YouTube channel where we post the videos, and you can sign up for updates and constant contact. So that concludes the video on our economic development element.